Welcome to the Influence Magazine show. I'm your host, Cedric Fisher, 40-year career journalist and publisher of New Mexico's Influence Magazine. If this is your first time joining us, you can get more information by logging on to influencenm.com. That's INFLUENCEN as in new, M as in Mexico.com. By all means, follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn. And for a recording of this particular episode of the show, go to your YouTube channel, toss in New Mexico's Influence Magazine in the search bar. You'll see this episode, all previous episodes, and future episodes. When you get there, we'd like you to subscribe and give us a thumbs up or a like. And by all means, hit the bell so that you don't miss any future editions or episodes of the Influence Magazine talk show. With each show, we introduce you to an individual from diverse backgrounds doing significant work. And we introduce you to their story of how they made it, and you can too. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll introduce you to today's guest. Stay tuned.
Looking to buy, sell, or rent a home? In the market for commercial property, land, or ranch? You've come to the right place. Welcome Home Realty. With over 100 years combined experience in real estate, Micah Swartz, Sharon Carr, and their team of realtors are well known throughout the community. Welcome Home Realty is your best source for all aspects of real estate in Alamogordo, Tularosa, La Luz, Cloudcroft, and all other areas within Otero and Lincoln County. Call for a one-on-one appointment today.
Welcome back to the Influence Magazine show. Okay, today's guest is special, and let me introduce you to a little bit of her background before we welcome her on. Nnayaha was born in South Carolina. Shortly thereafter, her parents moved to Maryland, and she grew up and was educated in the Maryland public school system. She graduated from Clinton Christian School in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, and attended Bowie State University, majoring in photography and broadcast journalism. She also has an interest in music and at one point relocated to California and for a time sang with a band performing live concerts. Nnayaha has extensive experience in marketing, advertising, and business management, overseeing groups of employees from clerical employees to maintenance crews. However, her skills never deviated too far from her formal education training in marketing management and media. As she'll see when we bring her on the show, she's a very, very gifted journalist and has done some work with KABT TV in Alamogordo, New Mexico, doing commercials, interviews, and hosting TV shows and programs since 2010. She's multi-talented. Her interests and hobbies are poetry, writing, interior design, photography, fashion design, music, cooking, nutrition, and herbology. Remember that word. We're going to get back to that in a second. Nnayaha, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
So, welcome. We know a lot about you already because we've got some history with you, but we'd like you to introduce your background a little bit to our viewing audience. So, tell us about yourself, your ethnicity, and where you're from.
Well, again, my name is Nnayaha, and I was born in South Carolina, Sumter, South Carolina, Shore Air Force Base. So, yeah, I'm a bit of an Army brat, and I grew up in Maryland, Upper Marlboro, Maryland, home of go-go music and mumbo sauce for all you Marylanders out there. Things that I miss very much about Maryland, those two things in particular. But my as far as my ethnic background is quite complicated. I come from two people who have multi backgrounds. Like their parents were born in the U.S., but their parents weren't. So I have a lot of immigrants in my background. On my mother's side, I have immigrants from everywhere from, well, I guess you can say it's immigrants, not quite, but Bahamas, Ireland, Mexico, and the Middle East, Saudi Arabia. And on my father's side, Of course, United States, Black America, um, but also Indonesia, the Java Islands. Yeah, the Java Islands, um, England. And my grandfather is Native American. His tribe is Cherokee, Eastern Band, and that's a major part of my background because he taught us a lot, and he was very insistent on us understanding our culture and what that means. So, hence the name Nnayaha.
Outstanding, outstanding. So you kind of identify with a lot of different groups.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, but I do identify as a Black American.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Very good.
Mhm.
So what's been your primary career?
Oh gosh, I've done a lot of things. My primary career is motherhood. Yes, I'm a mom first.
Yeah.
With all the other things that I've done, that's first and foremost. They kind of took over my world, my babies. So that I look at that as my first and foremost primary career. Now, outside of that, I would say definitely journalism. A lot of behind the scenes writing. Doing treatments, kind of organizing ideas for projects, and things like that. So journalism.
Okay. Sounds
Yeah.
good. And I understand you have 5 kids.
Yes, I have 4 daughters and a son.
Outstanding, outstanding. That took a lot of work, and and it's a never ending job, right? So even as they grow up and become adults, you're still parenting.
Absolutely.
Outstanding. So share with us your educational background.
Well, I studied broadcast journalism and photography at Bowie State University. And so that's kind of like my first experience or introduction as far as educational wise. But prior to that, growing up in a household where my mother was always writing books, always writing poetry. She was big on reading. And she taught me how to read at the age of 2 from the Bible, actually. So my first love for really literature, telling stories, understanding how they're composed, how they come together, how they impact us, and our part in that, that give and take of that transferring of energy, when it comes to literature, started when I was a baby. And so just going into, the schooling part of it, that was just the technical part of it for me. But journalism, broadcast journalism, it was kind of like always a part of my life.
Okay. Your family has a rich history in journalism.
Yes.
I've had the privilege of meeting your mom. And can you talk to us a little bit about that history and how you came to be a part of the company?
Wow. The history of everything is there's so much. We've always kind of been around entertainment. My grandfather had a club in New York where he had singers, some of the greats, Billie Holiday, and quite a few others that were regulars there. So my mother grew up seeing those things and being involved in the theater. She was a ballet dancer for quite some time. And so we grew up in an environment. That's how I got involved with music, because she used to sing to me. So my first love musically was Sarah Vaughan.
Wow.
Yes, Miss Sarah Vaughan herself.
Yeah.
Billie Holiday, Sam Cooke. I grew up trying to imitate those people, and it was like, I thought everyone did. I thought that was a part of everyone's life in everyone's household. I didn't know that that wasn't necessarily the case. And so just kind of watching my mother always creating, and she could drum up a story to keep us occupied at the drop of a hat. I mean, full spread characters, personalities, voices, storyline, all of that. She was just so good at it. It was like breathing for her. So we kind of always grew up in this very creative environment. And from there, she would write short stories, and it was kind of like a hobby for her. And then from there, she started taking it more seriously and published a few things and realized that the feedback was good. Like she had a talent for it. She was on to something. And there was just no stopping her from there. But she's always been a very independent thinker and very protective of her creative space. So she was never the type to be put in a box. And so the industry itself, I think, wasn't necessarily what she was interested in delving into. She wanted to experience and she wanted to live out her dream on her own terms. She also taught us that to be very, very astute and resolute in our abilities, our gifts, and to, not squander or take them for granted. So she decided, okay, we have a lot of talent amongst us. Let's do this for ourselves. And so that's how things developed over the years. She would pull things from us when she saw, okay, you have a talent for this, you have a talent for this, focus, pay attention, and let's do this for ourselves. And so here we are.
And fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. Your mom is a dynamic, special individual, and I can see she's done a great job with you guys as offspring. What has been, of course, you're a mom and still, busy raising your family, talented journalist. What's been your greatest accomplishment at this point in your journey?
Oh, well, my greatest accomplishment. Honestly, I think my greatest accomplishment thus far has been being instrumental in developing 5 of the most beautiful people that I've ever known in all my life. Teaching my children really to be stand-up human beings and to really understand the concept of treating others the way you would like to be treated. It's not just something that you say. You have to walk that out. Even when things are difficult, and even when, your consideration is not necessarily reciprocated. And I've, as young as they are, I've seen that time and time again. And it always challenges me. It always challenges me to keep myself in check and to understand that just by watching them, like I have to walk a very narrow path. And when it comes to how I respond to things, how I do things, how I perceive things, and how I take in the world around me. But I have to be absolute in how I consider or how I consider life and what I see as being the most important at the end of the day. So really, they're my greatest accomplishment in this life, in this world. Secondly, I would say that right now, just being a foundation and a contributor to our company, I think is an accomplishment because it doesn't come without challenges. It doesn't come without pushback. It doesn't come without being in the skin. You're not always perceived as someone who should be taken seriously. Things can be a lot more difficult. When you look like me, things can be a lot more difficult. And so having to push through those barriers and be confident and not budge, not sell out, not relinquish what I know has been given to me to protect and to represent the person who gave it to me, the Almighty. So I think being solid on my foundation and not being finessed or swayed or shaken off of my foundation, I think is, for me, is a great accomplishment.
It takes a lot of work. It's a never ending job there, but that's
Yes.
a heck of an accomplishment. Let me
Yes.
ask you this question. For those who know you well, what's the one thing people don't know about you but should? What's the one thing people don't know about you but should?
The one thing people don't know but should.
It could be something like you're highly spiritual. It could be that you're really kind of a introverted person while you seem to be extroverted.
I'm actually not extroverted. I am quite introverted. I am a very private person. I love my privacy. I love my peace and quiet. I love very rainy days with lots of thunder and lightning and wind. I know that sounds crazy, but I find it comforting.
Nothing wrong with that. Sure.
Yes, yes.
A lot of people do.
One thing though, I people don't know is that I have always dreamt about being in Africa. I've always dreamt about being in Africa. I can see myself there. Like, I've never been there before, but I would always imagine in my mind everything around me, everything down to the tiniest detail, what the air would feel like, the noises around me, what the energy would feel like. And I actually have a birthmark on my left arm, on the fold of my left arm, of the continent of Africa. And there's like a little birthmark next to it that's got where Madagascar would be. And so when I was a little girl, I realized what that because I used to look at it all the time. I didn't like it. I didn't want it there. But when I realized it was shaped like something, and I found out it was shaped like the continent of Africa, I felt like I always had Africa with me, no matter where I was. And one day, I was going to be there. I would have it and it would have me, and we would be together. It's not something that's fleeting. It's something that's with me all the time. I think about it all the time.
Well, I'm not a prophet, nor am I a fortune teller, but I'll predict one day you'll arrive in Africa. One day you'll find your way there.
It's my destiny.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this question, and then we're going to take a break. We have the privilege of interviewing a lot of leaders on the show. And one thing we've realized is all leaders are readers. One thing they all have in common is they read. And their go-to book is typically found on their nightstand. What book is on your nightstand?
The King James 1611 Bible.
The Bible.
With the Apocrypha in it. Yes. Yes. That is what's next to my bed.
Very good. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll hear more from Nnayaha. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Influence Magazine show. We're here today with Miss Nnayaha. And of course, Nnayaha, you realize this show is all about diversity and talking about ethnic groups and history and that sort of thing. So
yes.
Let's talk a little bit about melanin.
Yes, indeed.
And about its history. So you're very well studied in this, by the way, as our audience will soon find out. What are the chemical components of melanin?
Well, melanin is first let me say, melanin is one of those things that's very elementary, but very vital. When I say elementary, meaning it's the beginning of everything. It is, and there are different kinds of melanin. but specifically dealing with the melanin that people of color have or are made up of, especially Black people. That melanin starts with the egg and with the sperm. They're both covered in melanin. And so, when those two come together and life is produced, there is literally an electric charge when the sperm hits the egg. There's an electric charge, and it's almost like I don't know if there's where they get the Big Bang Theory from, but it's an explosion that happens, and life comes from that. And then inside that egg, as all of the elements come together to develop and create a human, it's melanin that plays a key and vital part in the development of the organs, of the skin, of the brain, of the central nervous system. Everything that we're composed of starts with melanin. In other words, without melanin, there is no life. It's impossible. And so considering that, I think my fascination with melanin is the fact that we're not taught about melanin. We're not instructed on how to care for it. We're not taught what it means, how we're affected by it every day. And that's not a coincidence. I think that's quite purposeful.
I was in a conversation with someone recently. We got on the topic of melanin as it pertains to slavery. Slavery was 400 years, and we were able to, as a people,
yes,
to weather. We were outdoors all
yes.
the time. I'm talking about from dusk to dawn.
Yes.
And in the South, in all this crazy Southern heat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think melanin was a key reason why we were able to survive it. Now, we probably dealt with things like skin cancer, who knew, but it wasn't, it was a rare case when it came up. So is there a biochemical reaction between melanin and sunlight?
Absolutely.
And if so, what's the significance of that reaction to the human body?
Well, the reaction that happens between melanin and the sun is just like a plant turns sunlight. It goes through a process of photosynthesis, and it turns sunlight into nutrients, vital nutrients in food. Well, our melanin does the same thing with sunlight. We absorb vitamins and minerals and energy from sunlight. The melanin is able to convert that energy, that heat, and that sunlight into more melanin. Hence the darkening of our skin when the sun hits it. It converts it into clean energy. We're able to absorb UV rays because melanin has natural sun blockers to block out the harmful things, but to absorb and convert the good stuff into food for our bodies. And so we are very resilient biochemically. We're resilient. And biochemically, that resilience also transfers to our brains, our spirits, how we think, why we've been able to survive so much for so long. And melanin is directly linked to spirituality. To whom much is given, much is required. That is why it's so important for us to understand who we are, what we have, what we possess, how it affects how we move, live, breathe, think, function, down to our senses. Our sense of smell, typically we have a better range of different smells, fragrances, aromas. Our vision, we see things differently. We have a greater capacity to hear fullness of sound. Yeah, the robust sounds and the deep sound tones, and we have the ability to hear more because of melanin. Yes. So we don't just like a lot of bass in our music, because we like a lot. No, there's a reason, because we can connect to the frequency, the vibration of it, just like your heartbeat. There's a rhythm in it. And as your heart beats, there are electrical charges in your heart. and the rhythm of things that keeps it beating, well, our melanin reacts to the rhythm of life all around us daily. But if we don't understand what that means and how we respond and react to things, then there's no way for us to really have fullness of life, the fullness of ourselves. And then we really need to understand why we're always bridled, why things are so much more difficult for us, why the playing field is never leveled for us.
So melanin can be a threat to those that don't have it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
It absolutely is. Our pineal glands help to support and produce melanin.
Mm-hmm.
Well, our pineal glands work in conjunction with melanin and is not calcified, but is larger than those who don't have melanin and is fully functional. Whereas in certain people groups, typically European people groups, are calcified over and doesn't produce melanin. And the melanin that it does produce is a different kind of melanin. And so biochemically, there's a difference. And so have you ever heard the saying, black don't crack?
I've heard that.
Okay, well, melanin has a lot to do with it. I mean, people say that, but there's real scientific data behind it to support that. We age differently, we recover differently, but we also respond to medicines differently. Medical institutions don't necessarily treat people with melanin properly, in my opinion. There are certain medicines that we should never have in our bodies. These can be damaging to melanin, and there's certain foods we should never eat. So it's important for us to understand all of these things. It's kind of like having a high performance vehicle and putting gasoline in that high performance vehicle that you would put in just, an everyday commuter vehicle. You wouldn't do that. Most people wouldn't do that. Why? Because they know it could damage the vehicle. The vehicle wouldn't perform up to standard. So it's like that for us and for melanin, and especially those who are deeply melanated. You're talking about a high performance vehicle that requires a different kind of nutritional upkeep, medical upkeep. The environment should be one that supports that melanin and the function of it. And we don't live in a society that is really set up for us.
That was going to be my next question. Does nutrition play a role, and is that important to melanin?
Absolutely. You have certain foods that are ideal for melanin production and preservation. Your fruits and vegetables are key. Clean foods are key. A lot of the things that we eat, unfortunately, traditionally, because of circumstances, aren't necessarily the best for us. And, a lot of us are sick because of it, but we don't understand why. We don't understand why because it wasn't broken down and told to us that if you eat these foods, it will have an effect on your biochemical function. And so down to the very cells, certain foods can ignite or unlock certain propensities in your genome for instance, for diseases that could otherwise lie dormant and you never know it's there. But you're eating the things that are unlocking things that are in your, genetic makeup from your background, parents, forefathers who have a propensity for certain diseases. And then you start to show signs because you're eating all the wrong things. Well, melanin works similarly. It's very sensitive to what we eat. And so, we should be aware of that. And we really, really need to take seriously the things that we put in our mouths, because yes, it could be a matter of life and death. It really can.
The good book says, "My people perish for a lack of knowledge. We do better if we knew better."
Yes.
And if you think of the medical community, at least the broader medical community, when it comes to diagnosing and addressing our particular diseases
Mm-hmm.
and issues, they oftentimes miss the mark
Yes.
because they simply, I mean, these are well-educated professionals, but if
Mhm.
they don't understand things like what you just explained and melanin, it's tough to prescribe, what to do or give us any kind of therapy for overcoming any type of, kind of a life-threatening disease. So
Right.
that lack of knowledge is really a problem. I'm sure our audience is really enjoying this information because I find it to be outstanding. But you don't have a medical background, right?
I don't. I don't have a medical background. No, not at all. But I have studied herbology, natural medicines, the human anatomy, um, for quite a few years. And I've learned by example. Just take, for instance, with my son, he has autism, and I was told a lot of things in regards to how I should address some of the things that he was going through because of the autism, like light sensitivity, sensitivity to sound. Um, some of these things were very, very difficult for him. And I was told that he needed to be on certain synthetic medicines. And at the time, I didn't know much about melanin. I did. Now, mind you, my son is 21 years old at this time. And I was being given this advice when he was still a toddler. He was 3 years old. So I had to learn over the years. Something just didn't feel right. I knew something wasn't right. It didn't sit with me. My spirit knew better. So I thought to myself, you know what? I don't think I should give my child something synthetic to deal with, and his body is organic living entity. So what I wanted to do was see if there was something that was natural that I could do for him and heal him rather than just mask a symptom. So I started studying natural medicine, and I learned through trial and error. But most importantly, I learned that every ailment or every dis-ease, there's something that the creator gave to us in nature to address those ailments or diseases. And so when you have something natural, the body can absorb it and can heal itself if you allow it. And so that's how I learned. I learned through trial and error and through years of research and study and my own personal experience with natural herbs and nutrition.
Brilliant.
So
You've got incredible talent, lots of horsepower across a myriad of different topics. Career-wise, what's next for you?
Oh gosh, I have so many things right now that I want to do. So many things on the table, but I think what I really would like to focus on right now is coming up with an initiative for trades and skills, viable, practical trades and skills. I'm sure you're probably familiar with he was an NBA player. He's a former NBA player, Mr. Kwame Brown.
Sure. Yes.
He was about a year ago. I saw a video clip of him talking about trades and coding in schools, that we need to get trades back into the school system. And it struck me, it really did, because this was something that I was thinking about. I remember there being a 4-H club in school when I was little. But by the time I hit high school, that wasn't an option. It vanished. It disappeared. It wasn't even an option. We don't have the skills to survive. If the system shuts down, everything stops right now today. There are no trucks rolling into the grocery stores. They turn off the water supply or something happens. And we can't get to those things that we have at our fingertips every day. What skills do we have to survive anything? Do we know how to irrigate? Do we know how to farm? Do we know anything about carpentry? Do we know how to sew? Do we know how to hunt? Do we know how to heal ourselves if we get sick? Do we know how to set, a wound or set a broken bone? We don't know how to build anything. Do we know how to build a house? Do we know how to find clean water? Do we know how to dig a well? We don't know these things. And I think it is very, 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 very important for us to get back to the basics and learn what it means to be independent, but it has to start here. To learn how to be independent and understand what it means to be able to put our hands to the land and know how to survive if everything stops. Not lose our senses, not go crazy if we can't get to our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram, all of our social media. Our lives are tied to social media, to the media. We don't know how to think without being told or dictated to through social media, or TV or radio, what we're supposed to think, what we're supposed to care about, what we're supposed to focus on. I think we've completely lost touch with who we are as human beings, as people. We were put here with everything that we need, but we've been so far removed from that concept. That's a problem. That's a huge problem. Now, I do believe in coding, teaching children how to code, teaching children how to be able to navigate through this technical world that we live in and not be lost or left behind. So I think the two would go well together. Trading in schools, learning skills, skill set, survival skills, and coding. All of those I think are very well rounded. And also conflict resolution is a skill set. I don't think we realize it, but I think that should also be taught. Conflict resolution and diplomacy is a skill set. It's not something that we're not born with it. It's something that has to be taught. And I think that if we focus on these issues, especially in communities where there's a lack of conflict resolution, there's a lack of finances, there's a lack of education, there's a lack of jobs. I think a lot of the times we see the problems amongst people of color in our communities, like inner cities, reservations, and things like that, because we don't see any hope for any conflict resolution. So if we can't see an end goal that is reachable and doable, despite all the mess around us, it's a continuous cycle. It will go on and on and on to the point that there'll be nothing left. And so I would like to work on a resolution and an initiative to get in these schools and start teaching these children skills, coding, and conflict resolution. So that is what's on the table for me right now.
Well said, Nnayaha, and we wish you all the best with that life work. This has been a most inspiring conversation, and I continue to learn a lot from you. I'm a big student of your philosophy. What a couple last questions, and what would be some parting words you might want to leave our audience with?
Care for one another. Truly care for one another. It is easier than you think to put your differences aside, for us to put our differences aside and pool our resources and truly care for one another and realize that in a lot of ways, we live through a lot of warfare, but we don't see what it is. But if we can get to a point where we can close ranks, pool our resources, care for one another, treat the next man like you want to be treated, build ourselves economically, work on ourselves spiritually, work on our physical health, work on our mental health, and seek a way out of an occupation, so to speak, then we won't just make it, we'll thrive. And then we'll have the foundation to rewrite our story on our own terms.
If any of our viewers may want to reach back out to you and learn a little bit more about what we discussed today, how can they contact you?
Okay. Well, I'm not big on social media, so you won't find me there, but you can email me at Nnayaha Avonna. That is NNAYAHAAVONNA @gmail.com.
Outstanding. Thank you again for coming on the show. You've been watching another fine episode of the Influence Magazine show. Stay with us until next time when we introduce you to another person doing significant work, all in the spirit of celebrating diversity. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.